spring of 1980, police were still reluctant to listen to Camille Bell.
Children were dying on the streets of Atlanta in the daytime.
Among them, Jeffrey Mathis, only 10. Like Yusef Bell, he walked down the street on an errand to this gas station to buy cigarettes for his mother. She never saw him again.
What we had here was a predator, and what he was looking for was somebody who was cut off from the herd. And if you don't realize you're in trouble until you're in trouble, then you have no way of getting out.
It would be another year before Jeffrey Mathis's body was found in a woods, miles from his home. His mother would join Camille Bell in forming a committee to confront the city's leaders.
The reaction of the police was that we were overreacting and that there was no serial killer.
Even though, by now, 6 black children were dead. 4 others were missing.
Perhaps we were like distraught parents that really needed everyone's sympathy, but nobody needed to do anything.
For years, it has been a dirty little secret among the press and the police. Deaths of blacks draw less attention than deaths of whites.
Nobody cared. So you could have several killings go on, and if the people were poor, then no one discovered there was a serial killing. If you were black and poor, then really nobody looked, especially if you were black and poor and Southern.
Police were slow to recognize these deaths were different. Many of the bodies were left in the woods, far from home, unlike most murder victims who are found where they fall.
Unsolved murders of children is very rare. If a 9-year-old got killed, it was because somebody slapped him across the room, he hit his head, and he died.
Police did not create a task force until a year after the first murders began. FBI profiler Roy Hazelwood came down to help. 3 detectives drove him around the city and turned into Jeffrey Mathis' neighborhood.
As soon as we turned onto that street, everything stopped. The guy cutting the grass stopped. Guys playing dominoes on the porch stopped. I said, "What's going on?" I said, "Everything stopped." They said laughingly, "That's because we have a honky in the car."
John Glover, who took over as FBI chief in Atlanta that summer, says that's why he and Hazelwood decided the killer had to be black.
The killer is someone who is invisible in the black community. And who is invisible in the black community but another black person?
Welcome Harris was one of the first task force detectives. He knew it had to be someone who went unnoticed.
We felt like it was somebody who would come in the neighborhood and get these children and not draw attention to themselves.
The question of which race struck a raw nerve. It had been only a dozen years since the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King. On the surface, Atlanta was a well-integrated city. Beneath the surface, it remained separate and unequal.
My prayer and the prayer of everybody in there was we wanted the person to be black. And the reason why you wanted to be black, I knew what it would do to this town if it had been a white person or somebody else of another race.
In the black community in the early 80s, a black serial killer was unheard of. All the classic serial killers were white, never black.
Doesn't mean it didn't have one there.
Today, black serial killers are not rare. In 2009, here in Cleveland, as well as in Milwaukee and Los Angeles, each time the accused serial killer turned out to be African American. Dr. Eric Hickey is a psychologist who keeps track of serial killers.
Overall, in my study, 1 out of every 5 serial killers is African American. In the past, since 1995, over 40% are African American. We're finally saying, you know what, blacks do this too.
There were whites who fed the fear in Atlanta. as FBI Chief John Glover had moved into this upper-class white neighborhood. His 12-year-old son was playing outside one afternoon.
Some guy in a pickup truck, he was out in the yard. In our side yard, we were on a corner, we lived in it, had a corner lot, you know, said, "I'm gonna get you, nigga," as he was driving by.
Kasim Reed, seen in these childhood photos, was only 10 when the first two bodies were found in the woods close to his home in the summer of 1979.
My life did change.
How so?
Not out as late as you used to be, not able to ride your bike unaccompanied.
In 2010, Reed would become the mayor of Atlanta. But back then, as the youngest boy in his family, his teenage brothers were his protectors.
And I didn't move without my brothers for about a year.
The bulk of the victims were boys like you.
You're right.
Your age.
You're right.
Black boys.
Yes.
Did you personally feel afraid?
I can't honestly say that I really felt afraid, except for at moments. You would have a van slow down, and everybody was very mindful of vans at the time.
People were suspicious of everybody, and they were afraid. And the children, you had children walking the street, car go by, you could see some of them were in fear.
And for good reason. The murders were about to increase to a body almost every week.